The sky above 7 burned orange and red. Smoke rose from broken buildings. Fire spread through the eastern district where families once lived in peace. Commander stood at her command center window and watched her world die. She was a species with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that could see in the darkest night. Her people were traders and scientists. They built this outpost to study the stars. They never expected war to find them here. But war found everyone eventually. The Void Swarm had arrived 3 weeks ago. They came from the dark spaces between stars, millions of creatures with black shells and sharp claws. They did not talk. They did not negotiate. They only consumed. Planet after planet fell to them. Now it was Seven's turn. Turned away from the window. Her command center was full of tired officers. Screens showed red warnings everywhere. The third defensive wall had fallen 2 hours ago. The fourth wall was cracking. After that, there was nothing between the swarm and 20,000 civilians hiding in underground shelters. "Commander," said her aide, a young named Bora, "we have lost contact with Defense Station 9. "How many soldiers were there?" asked. 200. Closed her eyes, 200 more dead. She had started this battle with 15,000 defenders. Now less than 4,000 remained. They were exhausted. They were running out of ammunition. The medical centers were full of wounded who would never fight again. "Send another message to Coalition Command," ordered. "Tell them we need reinforcements immediately. Tell them we will not survive another week." Bora hesitated. "Commander, we have sent 12 messages already. They say all fleets are engaged in other battles. No one is coming." "Send it again." His voice was hard. "Someone must come. Someone must hear us." The message went out into the void of space. Did not expect an answer. She had stopped hopping 3 days ago. Now she only waited for the end. But this time, something different happened. 2 hours later, Bora rushed into his quarters where she was trying to sleep. "Commander, we received a response." Jumped from her bed and ran to the command center. On the main screen, she saw a transmission from Coalition Command. Her hearts had to beat fast as she read the words. "Reinforcements available, human contingent. Unit designation, arrival time 6 hours, confirm acceptance." Stared at the screen. Humans. She had heard of them, but barely. They were a young species from a small blue planet far away. They had joined the Coalition only 50 years ago. Their technology was average. Their fleet was small. Most Coalition species considered them unimportant. "Humans?" Bora said with doubt in his voice. "Commander, what can humans do against the swarm?" Thought about the thousands of civilians below her feet. She thought about the children who cried for parents who would never return. She thought about the soldiers dying on the walls right now. "Accept the reinforcements," she said. "Accept anything they send." The confirmation went out. A few minutes later, a direct communication channel opened. A human face appeared on screen. It was a male with brown skin and dark eyes. He had a scar running across his jaw. Behind him, could see other humans preparing equipment. "Commander," the human said. His voice was calm and steady. "I am captain of the. We will arrive in 6 hours. Please provide tactical data on enemy positions." Leaned toward the screen. "Captain, I must be honest with you. We face tens of thousands of swarm creatures, possibly more. How many soldiers are you bringing?" There was a pause. Captain looked at something off screen, then back at her. 42. Felt her blood turn cold. 42? "Captain, I asked for an army. I need thousands of soldiers. 42 humans cannot possibly." "Commander," his voice cut through her words. It was not loud, but it stopped her completely. "We are 42 is enough. Now please send the tactical data. We need to prepare." Wanted to argue. She wanted to scream that this was madness, but something in the human's eyes made her stop. There was no fear there, no doubt, only a certainty she had never seen before. "I am sending the data now," she said quietly. Good, one more question. Leaned forward slightly. Are there civilians in the combat zone? Yes, about 20,000 in underground shelters. The human nodded slowly. Then we will not let the swarm reach them. You have my word, Commander. Hold the line for 6 more hours. We are coming. The transmission ended. Stood in silence. Around her, officers exchanged worried looks. Bora stepped closer and spoke softly. Commander, 42 soldiers against tens of thousands. This is not reinforcement. This is suicide. Remembered the human's eyes, that absolute certainty, that complete calm. Perhaps, she said, but there was something about him, Bora, something I cannot explain. He was not lying. He truly believes they can do this. Believing and doing are different things. Yes, walked back to the window. Outside, explosions lit up the night as her soldiers fought and died. But we have no other choice. We hold the line for 6 hours, and we pray that these humans are as dangerous as their captain believes. 6 hours. It felt like a lifetime. But somewhere in the dark of space, 42 humans were coming. 42 soldiers who called themselves. Did not know what that word meant yet, but she would learn. The whole galaxy would learn. The human came down through the burning sky like metal coffins falling from heaven, watched them from the landing platform, her tired eyes tracking each vessel as it broke through the smoke and fire. There were only 3 ships, small ones. She had hoped for more. Around her stood 50 soldiers, the best she had left. They were curious about these humans who had come to help them die. Some whispered jokes about the small reinforcement. Others simply stared with empty eyes, too exhausted to care anymore. The ships landed hard on the broken platform. Their doors opened with a hiss of steam, and the humans walked out. Counted them, 42, just as had said. They wore heavy armor colored dark gray and black. Each carried weapons that looked too big for normal soldiers. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but their movements spoke of discipline and purpose. At the front walked Captain. He had removed his helmet. The scar on his jaw looked worse in person. His eyes moved across the platform, taking in everything: the damaged buildings, the distant explosions, the tired soldiers. He missed nothing. Beside him walked a woman. She was shorter than but moved with a silence that made uncomfortable. This was Lieutenant. She did not speak. She did not need to. Her presence alone felt like a weapon. Captain stepped forward. Welcome to 7. I wish we could meet under better conditions. Shook her hand. His grip was firm but not painful. There are no good conditions in war, Commander. Only different kinds of bad. Show us where to fight. Led them through the compound. She explained the situation as they walked. The swarm had broken through 3 walls. The 4th wall was weak. Her soldiers were dying faster than she could count. Ammunition would run out in 2 days. Listened without interrupting. Behind him, they unloaded their equipment. Saw massive mechanical suits, exoskeletons. She remembered they were called. She saw weapons as big as ground vehicles. She saw crates marked with human writing she could not read. 42, finally asked, unable to hold back any longer. Captain, please understand. I am grateful for any help, but I asked for an army. The swarm has tens of thousands of warriors. How can 42 soldiers make any difference? Stopped walking. He turned to face her. In the distance, an explosion shook the ground. Neither of them moved. Commander, you asked for reinforcements. You got. We are not regular soldiers. He paused, searching for words. Humans are not born as warriors. We are soft creatures from a small planet, but some of us choose to become something else. We train until our bodies break, then train more. We study war until it becomes part of our blood. We volunteer for missions that others call impossible. Lieutenant spoke for the first time. Her voice was low and cold. We exist for moments like this, when everything is lost, when hope is gone. That is when we are most useful. Looked at the other. They were setting up positions along the 4th wall. A young soldier, barely more than a boy, was calibrating a rifle longer than his own body. This was Private, the sniper. Nearby, a woman named Sergeant was sharpening a blade by hand, testing its edge against her thumb. "Why use a blade?" asked. "Against the swarm." Looked up and smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Because sometimes you run out of bullets, Commander, and the swarm keeps coming anyway." That night the humans did not sleep. They worked in the darkness, building defenses, planting devices, studying the terrain. Watched them from her command center. She could not understand these creatures. A human engineer named was repairing a shield generator that technicians had declared dead. He worked calmly while explosions echoed in the distance. When asked how he could concentrate, he shrugged and said, "The noise helps me focus. Silence makes me nervous." The medic, a woman named, was checking her supplies. Noticed she carried not just medical equipment but also weapons, multiple weapons. "You are a healer," said. "Why so many guns?" Looked at her with kind eyes that held something hard underneath. "Because sometimes the best way to save a life is to take one first. I heal my friends. I kill their enemies. Both are medicine." Near midnight, Captain found standing alone on a broken balcony. She was watching the swarm in the distance, a black tide of creatures waiting for dawn. "You should rest," said. "I cannot. Every time I close my eyes, I see my soldiers dying." She turned to him. "Captain, what does truly mean?" Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "It means we were born once as normal humans. Then war found us and we were born again, not as people who fight wars, but as war itself wearing human skin." He looked at the distant swarm. "Those creatures out there think they understand violence. They consume and destroy because it is their nature. But we chose this. Every chose to become a weapon. That choice makes us more dangerous than any instinct ever could." Felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold wind. "Are you not afraid?" she asked. Considered the question. "Fear exists in all living things, but learn to use fear as fuel. It makes us faster, sharper, more alive." He turned back to her. "Tomorrow the swarm attacks. They will expect your tired soldiers. They will find us instead. And they will learn what humans become when we decide something must not fall." Dawn was coming. The swarm was massing. And 42 humans prepared to show the galaxy what it meant to be. Dawn came bloody and red. The sun rose through smoke and ash, painting the sky in colors of fire. Commander stood at her command center, watching screens filled with enemy movement. The swarm was coming. They poured over the hills like black water, thousands upon thousands of creatures with hard shells and sharp claws. Their legs made a sound like thunder as they ran toward the fourth wall. Acid dripped from their mouths. Their eyes saw nothing but prey. "All units prepare for contact," said into her communicator. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. On the wall, soldiers raised their weapons. They had fought for 3 weeks. They had watched friends die. Now they prepared to die themselves. But this time they were not alone. Captain stood at the center of the wall. He wore his full exoskeleton now, a massive suit of metal and machine that made him twice his normal size. A rotating cannon was mounted on his right arm. On his left, a shield generator hummed with power. Behind his helmet, his eyes watched the approaching horde without fear. He said calmly into his radio, "Hold until my mark." The swarm hit the first line of defenses. Mines exploded. Hundreds of creatures died in fire and smoke, but more came, always more. They climbed over their own dead and kept running. "Hold!" Energy barriers activated. Swarm creatures slammed into invisible walls and burned. The smell of cooked flesh filled the air, but the barriers could not last forever. They flickered. They failed. The swarm pushed through. "Hold!" Soldiers opened fire. Bright beams of light cut through the enemy ranks. Swarm creatures fell by the dozens. But for every one that died, 10 more took its place. The black tide reached the base of the wall and began to climb. Now said, the attacked jumped from the wall directly into the enemy mass. His cannon roared to life, spraying death in a wide arc. Swarm creatures exploded into pieces. He moved through them like a storm through leaves, unstoppable and terrible. His exoskeleton crushed bodies under its feet. His cannon never stopped firing. Lieutenant was beside him, but she fought differently. She carried two plasma blades that glowed bright blue. She moved like smoke, sliding between enemies, cutting and slicing with perfect precision. Every swing killed. Every step brought more death. She did not waste a single movement. On a collapsed tower behind the wall, Private lay with his massive rifle. He was the youngest, barely 20 years old, but his hands were steady. He looked through his scope and found his targets, not the regular swarm soldiers, but the commanders hidden far behind the lines. His rifle barked once. A swarm commander's head exploded 2 kilometers away. He adjusted his aim, fired again. Another commander fell. Without their commanders, the swarm soldiers became confused. They stopped working together. They crashed into each other. They attacked without purpose. Kept firing one shot, one kill over and over. On the eastern section of wall, Sergeant had run out of ammunition for her rifle. A normal soldier would retreat, drew her blade and jumped into the enemy. She was not as fast as, she was not as strong as, but she had something else, a complete absence of fear. She fought like someone who had already accepted death and found it boring. Her blade cut through swarm shells like paper. When creatures surrounded her, she only smiled and cut faster. A soldier screamed at her, "You are insane, fall back." Corporal, working nearby to fix a damaged gun tower, laughed at this. "She is not insane," he called out while connecting wires under enemy fire. "She just forgot how to lose. We all did." The gun tower hummed back to life, aimed it at the thickest part of the swarm and opened fire. Hundreds of creatures died in seconds. In the medical station behind the wall, worked with bloody hands. Wounded soldiers, both and human, filled every bed. She moved between them quickly, stitching wounds, stopping bleeding, saving lives. When a swarm creature broke through a window, she killed it with a surgical laser without stopping her work on a patient. "Hold still," she told the wounded calmly. "I am almost finished." The battle raged for hours. The sun climbed high and began to fall. The ground became covered with swarm bodies. The air became thick with smoke and the smell of death. And still the fought. Private held a narrow passage alone when his section of wall collapsed. Swarm creatures poured through. He planted his feet and fired until his weapon overheated. Then he picked up a fallen rifle and kept firing. When that broke, he used his fists. When other soldiers reached him, they found him standing on a mountain of dead enemies. His armor was cracked. His blood mixed with swarm ichor, but he was alive. "Took you long enough," he said, and passed out. By sunset, the first wave was broken. 8,000 swarm creatures lay dead. The fourth wall still stood. Commander walked through the battlefield in shock. She had expected to die today. Instead, she watched humans reload their weapons and check their armor like this was normal, like destroying an army was just another day. She found Captain cleaning his cannon. His exoskeleton was dented and scratched. Green swarm blood covered him from head to toe, but he was unharmed. "How many casualties?" she asked. Looked up, "None." "None, that is impossible." "Not impossible." He stood and looked at the setting sun. "Just difficult, and we are very good at difficult things." Stared at him, at this human who had killed hundreds today without losing a single soldier. "What are you?" she whispered. Met her eyes. In his gaze she saw exhaustion, pain, and beneath it all an iron will that would not bend. "We are human," he said simply. "This is what we become when something matters enough." The first wave was over, but both of them knew the swarm would return, and next time they would be smarter. The real battle was just beginning. The swarm learned fast. They always did. That was what made them so dangerous. They lost 8,000 soldiers in the first wave, and they understood their mistake. The humans were strong on the wall, so the swarm would not attack the wall. They would go under it. Night fell on Seven like a black blanket. The moons were hidden behind smoke clouds. Darkness covered everything. Commander tried to rest in her command center, but sleep would not come. Her mind kept replaying the day's battle, the impossible things she had seen the humans do. At midnight, the ground began to shake. Jumped from her chair. Alarms screamed throughout the compound. Screens flickered with warnings she did not understand. Then she heard it, a deep rumbling sound coming from below. "They are tunneling," Bora shouted. "The swarm is coming from underground." The floor exploded. Swarm creatures burst up through the concrete like demons from hell. They were inside the compound now, inside the walls that had protected them. Soldiers screamed and died before they could raise their weapons. Civilians in the shelters below heard the sounds of battle above them and held their children close. Grabbed her communicator. "All units, breach in sectors 4, 7, and 9. The enemy is inside." Captain's voice came back immediately. "Understood. Scatter protocol, protect the civilians, kill everything else." The split apart like fingers of a hand spreading wide. Each one moved to a different part of the compound. Each one became an army of one. In Sector 4, Lieutenant found 40 swarm creatures slaughtering wounded soldiers in a medical ward. She walked through the door with her plasma blades already glowing. The creatures turned to face her. She did not slow down. She did not speak. She simply began to kill. Her blades moved so fast they left trails of light in the air. Swarm creatures fell in pieces around her. When one managed to spray acid at her left arm, she cut off its head and kept fighting. The acid burned through her armor. It reached her skin. It began to eat her flesh. Did not scream. She finished killing every creature in the room, then walked to a medical cabinet and found bandages. She wrapped her melting arm herself, her face showing no pain at all. A wounded soldier stared at her with huge eyes. "Your arm. You need help." Later said, "There are more enemies to kill first." She walked out to find more swarm to destroy. In Sector 7, Sergeant protected a collapsed tunnel entrance where civilians were hiding. Swarm creatures came at her in waves, 5, then 10, then 20 at once. She stood at the narrow entrance like a gate made of human flesh and steel. Her blade broke on the 15th creature. She picked up a swarm claw from a dead enemy and used that instead. When that broke too, she used her armored fists. When her fists became too damaged, she grabbed creatures by their heads and smashed them into each other. Corporal found her an hour later, still fighting, standing on a pile of dead bodies that reached her waist. "I brought you a new weapon." She caught the rifle he threw without looking. "Good timing. I was getting bored." In the command center, fought to keep control. Screens showed red everywhere. Breaches in a dozen locations. Casualty reports flooding in. And then the main door exploded inward. A swarm commander entered, a massive creature twice the height of a human, covered in bone plates thick as armor. Behind it came 50 soldiers. They had found the heart of the defense and meant to cut it out. Raised her sidearm. It would do nothing against that monster, but she would die fighting. Then Captain came through the broken wall. His exoskeleton was damaged. One arm hung useless at his side. He had broken it earlier, saving a group of trapped civilians. But he had come anyway, because this was where he was needed. "Commander," he said calmly, "please step back." The swarm commander roared and charged, met it head-on. What followed was not a battle. It was a war compressed into a small room. The commander was stronger than, it was faster than his damaged exoskeleton. It hit him with enough force to crack walls. Again and again it struck him, driving him back, breaking his armor piece by piece. but would not fall. Every time he was knocked down, he stood back up. Every time he was thrown against a wall, he pushed himself forward. His broken arm hung useless. His armor fell away in pieces. Blood ran from his nose, his mouth, his ears, but he kept fighting. The battle lasted 11 minutes. At the end stood over the dead commander with his boot on its throat. The creature's skull was crushed. His fists were broken and bloody. He swayed on his feet, barely conscious. Lieutenant appeared at the door, her left arm wrapped in bloody bandages. "Captain, we need you in the eastern sector." Looked at her. Then he looked at his broken arms. Without a word, he grabbed his left arm and twisted. Bones cracked back into place. He did the same with his right arm. The pain must have been beyond imagination, but his face showed nothing. "Then let us go," he said. Watched him walk out. She had seen many things in her long military career. She had never seen anything like this. In the shelters below, 3,000 civilians waited in darkness. They could hear the sounds of battle above them, explosions, screams, the roar of weapons. They held each other and prayed to gods they were not sure existed. They did not know that 42 humans were dying to protect them. They did not know that each of those humans had decided that these strangers, these aliens they had never met, were worth more than their own lives. They did not know yet, but they would learn. Dawn came slowly. The tunnels were sealed. The breaches were closed. The swarm's second wave had failed. 3 were critically injured. Private had taken a claw through his chest and was being kept alive only by desperate surgery. 2 others had lost limbs, but none were dead. Not yet. Found sitting alone on a pile of rubble, watching the sunrise. Both his arms were in emergency casts. His face was swollen and bruised. He looked like a man who should be dead. "How?" she asked. "How do you keep going?" Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was tired but firm. "Because stopping means failing. And do not fail, we break, we bleed, we die, but we do not fail." The sun rose higher. Somewhere in the distance the swarm was gathering again. The third wave was coming. And it would be the worst of all. The horizon turned black, not with smoke this time, but with bodies. The swarm had gathered everything they had left, every creature, every soldier, every nightmare that crawled in the darkness between stars. They stood on the hills surrounding 7 like a sea of death waiting to flood in. Commander looked at the tactical screens and felt her soul grow cold. That is, there must be over 50,000 of them. 53,000, Captain said. He stood beside her, both arms still in casts, his body held together by painkillers and willpower. "Give or take a few hundred. We cannot survive this." Looked at her, his eyes were calm. "Probably not, but we will make them pay for every meter they take." He gathered on the 4th wall. They came slowly, carrying wounds that would have killed normal soldiers. Lieutenant's left arm was gone now. The acid damage had spread too far and had cut it off to save her life. Sergeant walked with a limp from a wound in her thigh. Private should have been dead, but he stood anyway, bandages wrapped around his chest, his eyes burning with a light that refused to die. Only 31 could still fight. 11 were too injured to move. Looked at them. These men and women who had followed him across the stars. These soldiers who had given everything and were ready to give more. "You know what we face," he said quietly. "You know our odds. Coalition reinforcements are 3 days away. We have hours at best." He paused. "No one would blame you for falling back, for protecting the wounded, for surviving." Silence, no one moved. Sergeant spat on the ground. "Captain, with respect, shut up. We did not come here to survive. We came here to make sure those civilians do." Private, the young sniper, nodded. His rifle was as long as his body and he held it like a lover. "I still have ammunition. That means I still have work to do." One by one, every nodded. They clasped hands. They shared words that could not hear, and then they went to their positions without fear. The swarm attacked. They came like a wave of darkness, screaming across the broken ground. The walls shook with their footsteps. The air filled with their hunting cries. This was not a battle, it was an extinction event. The did not care stood at the main gate. His exoskeleton was destroyed, so he fought without it. He carried a heavy rifle in his broken arms, firing until it overheated, then picking up another from the dead. When the swarm reached the gate, he drew a knife. A knife against an army. The first creature that reached him died with that blade in its eye. The second died when crushed its throat with his cast-covered fist. The third, fourth, fifth, they all fell. The pile of bodies around him grew higher and higher. Lieutenant fought beside him with one arm. She had given her second plasma blade to another soldier and kept only one. It was enough. She danced through the enemy like fire through dry wood, leaving death in her wake. When her blade finally broke, she picked up a swarm claw and kept killing. Across the battlefield, Private climbed to the highest point he could find. His rifle spoke again and again, each shot killing a swarm commander. He was changing the battle one bullet at a time. When a creature found his position and charged at him, he killed it with his pistol without taking his eye from the scope. 94, he counted. 95, 96. Then a swarm soldier came from behind. Its claw punched through his chest before he could turn. Fell, but as he fell, he pressed his radio and spoke his last words. Enemy commanders at grid 774, 3 of them, behind the burned building. Artillery struck that position moments later. 3 commanders died. Smiled as his eyes closed. 99 kills, not bad for a boy from a small town. In the eastern sector, Sergeant had gathered a group of soldiers around her. They were terrified, ready to run. She stood in front of them with her blade in hand. "Look at me," she said. "Look at me. Those things out there want to eat your families, your children. Are you going to let them?" The soldiers stared at her. This human woman covered in blood, missing part of her ear, standing on a wounded leg that should not be able to support her. "I am not from your world," continued. "I did not know any of you before this week, but I will die for your people today. Will you do less?" The soldiers raised their weapons. They stood beside her, and when the swarm came, they fought together. Died holding that line. A swarm creature finally got past her blade and tore open her stomach. But even as she fell, she grabbed the creature's head and broke its neck with her last strength. The soldiers she had inspired held the eastern sector for another hour. The battle went on, fell one by one, was killed pulling a wounded civilian to safety, died when he detonated a bomb to seal a tunnel, taking 100 swarm with him. Private finally collapsed from his wounds, but not before killing 30 more enemies. By sunset, only 9 remained standing. The fourth wall was broken. The swarm was inside the compound. Everything seemed lost. Then the civilians emerged. 3,000 of them, men, women, and children, came up from the shelters. They carried tools, pipes, anything that could be used as a weapon. They had watched the humans die for them. They could hide no longer. Commander led them. She had never been a frontline soldier, but today she would be. Today everyone would be. "For our home," she shouted, "for those who died for us." The civilians charged into the swarm. What happened next was chaos. It was bloody. It was terrible, but it was enough. The swarm had not expected this. They had broken the warriors. They were not prepared for the people they had come to consume to rise up and fight back. The attack slowed. The momentum shifted. And in that moment, the sky lit up with new fire. Coalition reinforcements had arrived, 3 days early. They had heard of the battle. They had heard of the humans called, and they had come as fast as their ships could fly. The swarm was caught between the remaining defenders and the fresh army descending from the sky. By morning, it was over. Of the 42, 11 were dead. The rest were wounded. Every single one had become a legend. Commander wrote her report that night. Her hands shook as she typed. How could she explain what she had seen? How could words capture what these humans had done? She did her best. I asked for reinforcements. I expected an army. What I received were 42 humans who called themselves. I have commanded soldiers from many species. I have never seen anything like them. They do not fight like soldiers. They fight like the galaxy itself wronged them and they intend to make it pay. They do not fear death. They simply refuse to accept it. When the battle ended, Captain stood before me, broken and bleeding, and asked only one question. Are your people safe? I told him yes. He smiled, the first time I had seen a human smile, and said, then it was worth it. I do not know what Earth did to create such beings. I only know that I am grateful they fight beside us, and I pray we never give them reason to fight against us. The report spread across the galaxy. Every species read it. Every commander studied it. And a new truth became known among the stars. Before they left, Captain visited one final time. His arms were still in casts. His face was still bruised, but he walked straight and tall. Your people are brave, she told him. But why? Why sacrifice so much for strangers? Thought for a moment. Because someone has to stand between the darkness and the innocent, and we decided it would be us. The human ships rose into the sky and disappeared among the stars. In the years that followed, many species would face the darkness. Many would feel despair. Many would think all hope was lost. But they would remember the humans. They would remember and they would know that somewhere in the galaxy, 42 soldiers had proven that courage and will could break any enemy. The message spread across 100 worlds, passed from parent to child, from soldier to soldier, from one generation to the next. If you face the darkness, call the humans. They will send there. And the darkness will break.